Ladies and gentlemen, this week on the Peas, I make my boy Nick watch a horror film. Nick, I'm reaching my hand out. The candle is lit. I let you in. Welcome back to Two Peas on a Podcast. Gerald here with you, and of course, my boy Nick on the flip side. What's up, brother?
Welcome to Two Knives and a Face Cast, which is
Wow,
extremely relevant to
that is super violent.
today's movie discussion.
Wow.
Today the horror guy is here. I'm
Yes.
the horror guy. It's me. It's me. No other person on the podcast enjoys horror movies. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
So glad to have you here. So grateful for all of you for all of your amazing comments, everybody listening, everybody's been awesome, really.
Absolutely.
Since I jumped into the show, and it's been really, really nice to hear everyone enjoying my presence, I think, for the most part, except for Dan. Dan's
Dan's okay with it too, I think.
Dan's fine.
Look, man, I'm really enjoying it, and I really appreciate it. And this is our fifth review, I think.
Listen, I am not keeping track, man, because
it took us this long, though, to dive into horror. Now, for those listening that might not know, or if you're not watching on video or whatever, I am a bona fide, self-proclaimed horror guy. It's my favorite genre of film. I love horror. I love all film, but it's my favorite genre. However, Nick, my partner over there, the other P on the pod, does not really tend to gravitate towards horror. Nick, is that fair to say? Like, it's just not your thing, right?
Decidedly not my thing, man. It's just like horror movie tropes are just not for me. I often find horror characters are really, really thin. Really just they make the stupidest decisions in a lot of these movies. Now, I love like gore. Like, I can watch a movie with like gore and splatter and like all sorts of like creature effects, monster movies. Like, I love a lot of different movies in the horror genre. Like, make no mistake, I really do. But by and large, like, a horror movie really has to work hard to let me in, as it were. And
good stuff.
I mean, did Talk to Me do that? I guess we'll find out when we get to our review.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it. The review this week for the Peas is Talk to Me, the new Australian horror film from A24, which was directed by twin brothers that are YouTube kind of filmmakers. I don't know if you knew that. The Philippou brothers, Danny and Michael, and they are this YouTube duo called Rackaracka. Did you know that, Nick, going into this?
No, I knew nothing about this movie going into it. All I had seen is the poster in like the theater lobby with the weird looking hand.
Yeah.
Those of you on video, this thing that's trying to grab me right now.
I see that, yeah. You had the mushroom cloud behind you last week and this giant hand behind you this week. Well, before we get into Talk to Me, which will be the review this week, we start every episode by asking each other one big question. So let's get into that segment.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
I had too much fun putting that together.
It is so good. I don't know what Dan's going to edit out of this, but thank you for that. So that was the first ever sound drop kind of jingle, if you will, that I've been asking Nick to come up with for one big question. Nick, I have mine. You have one you want to ask me. Would you
ready.
like to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'm getting in on it. So I've got this giant creepy hand like trying to grab me from behind. It's like it's right there. It's going to get a hold of me. Gerald, if you had a creepy ceramic hand that let you communicate with some plane of existence, now it can be real, imagined, whatever, some plane of existence. You touch it, you hold it, and you speak the magic words. What plane of existence, what realm, whatever would that be? Would it be the dead? Would it be, I don't know, elves or Tolkien or, like the Fast and Furious? So you could just be right there to channel Vin directly. Like, what would you do?
I like that. I like that spin on it, because I have a question for you that I thought we were going to have the same question, but yours is a little bit different. So, yeah, I think I would probably go kind of like flux capacitor on it, where I would want to use it as a bit of a time travel thing where I could go back to a different era, and I could just kind of decide in the moment, like, I want to go back to 1942, or I want to go back to, the 50s or whatever. Does
Nice.
that make
Okay.
sense? Like, kind of use it as like,
Yeah.
and then once I'm there, and I just kind of find somebody to talk to, and like, hey, I'm from the future. Let's talk.
They take one look at you, brother, and they'd be like, "You
They'd be
are
like,
Looney Tunes, my friend."
you are definitely from the future. What the fuck?
Uh-huh.
Why do you look like that? That's what they'd say to me. What's
That's
happening in
is
the
that
future?
is that what people look like in the future? Ugh.
But I don't know if that makes sense. That's off the top of my head, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, I
I
could just
like
kind of
that.
use it to transport to a different era and then kind of,
Yeah.
question people there, to kind of
Yeah, I
get to
like
know
it.
them. Well, mine for you, like I said, I thought you were kind of going this route, but this might be a gimme, but I actually am genuinely curious about this.
Mm.
Now, if you had, and we're going to get into the plot of the movie when we get into our review of it, but just so everyone knows, basically there's a ceramic embalmed hand that allows spirits to talk to the person on the other side in the real, in present day, if you will. So if
Mm.
you were in that seat and you were doing this, that a lot of the teens in the movie do, what spirit, it can be somebody that you knew personally, or it can be a famous person or whatever, what person would you want to see on the other side of you that you had an opportunity to quote unquote talk to?
I want two qualifiers, sir. Number
Mm.
one, do they have to look all dead and weird? Number two, do I have a choice in whether or not I'm dumb enough to do this in the first place?
You don't have a choice. So, for
Okay.
the purposes of one big question, you're doing it,
I
okay?
got to do it. Okay, I got to do it.
But
Okay.
in terms of what they looked like, I'll just say it's probably whatever they looked like when they died. So, if they were in a horrible car accident, then they're probably going to look fucked up. If they died quietly in their bed, then they probably look nice and serene. So, I'll just
Hmm.
let you kind of think about that.
Okay. Well, I mean, it doesn't. I guess it doesn't really matter because I guess it's all about like who, like the person you'd want to be in front of you, necessarily would be. And one of my favorite movies is Citizen Kane. One of my favorite filmmakers of all time is Orson Welles. I'd love to sit down and just have a jaw with Orson Welles about film,
Hmm.
about his love of film, about his creative process and things like that. I think that'd be glorious.
That's a good one. I could see that for you too. Man, that would be a great,
I'll
man,
take that one.
you would fucking love that. You'd be floating on a cloud for weeks after that.
Yeah, well,
Well, for
depends
me,
on
it
what he
would.
looks like when he comes back.
How scared you are, I guess. Well, for me, it would be a little more personal. Be my dad. Like,
Nice.
now, I guess I should have the caveat because as we get into this movie, it kind of comes up here with a parental figure as well. But I don't know. I feel like it would kind of freak me out if I didn't know and I didn't see it coming, though. Like if it was like blindsided me. But if I had a choice and I
Yeah.
knew I was going to be talking to my dad, then that's different. So that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but he was just so young. He was 42 when he passed. I was young. I was like 20 years old when he passed. I was young. Just so many things that I wasn't mature enough to really have talked to him about yet at that point in my life. And as I've gotten older and as I've had kids, that would of course be his grandkids if he were still around. I would just
Yeah. Yeah.
love to kind of, see what he has seen of my life and just kind of like, catch up with him. So that would be it's a personal answer, but that's kind of the first thing I
That's
thought of.
just a way better answer than I could have ever come up with
Nah,
for that
man,
question.
come on,
Way
come on.
better answer.
Come on, man. I don't know. You had a
Good
good one.
stuff.
Orson Welles is a good one. All right. Talk to me is the review tonight after the 1 point questionnaire. Thank you for that, Nick. Orson Welles. Good answer, man. And we are going to give our scores individually out of 10. We do that to start the discussion every week. Nick and I have not shared our scores with each other. Very little discussion online about this movie until we got together tonight. So if you're ready, Nick, here we go. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it, baby.
Ready, set, go. Your boy's giving it a 7 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
Holy Lord.
4 out
Wow.
of 10.
This is going to be a lively discussion. 4 out of 10 from
Want to
Nick.
know what's great about this too, ladies and gentlemen, is so when we're talking about doing the theme of the show, Gerald really wants to do this 2P's score, like the combined score, and it's like
yeah,
the
what is
average
it?
between the two.
Yeah.
It's 5.5, Gerald. It's he wants to do the combined score for the whatever movie we're watching, and that's the 2P's score. I'm gonna drag like a giant anchor the average for every horror movie down so bad.
I guess you will, because here we go. I would not be giving this a 4 or a 5, but I guess that's what the show score is. So 7 from me, a 4 from you. Real quick, let me just read the synopsis from Letterboxd. When a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. As I mentioned before, this is spoiler free at the top for a few minutes here, Nick. As I mentioned before, first time filmmakers, the Philippou brothers, only done YouTube kind of short films prior to this. And that's actually one of the things I really admire about the film is some of the filmmaking aspects, knowing that it's the first feature for these guys. But I want to hear your thoughts, spoiler free thoughts on why this just did not work for you.
I mean, to be 100% honest, I talked about like what horror movies really have to do to connect with me, and this just quite simply didn't do it. I was not drawn to any of these characters. I wasn't connected to any of these characters. I think the performances are good. Let me say that from the outset. I think the performances are good, particularly Sophie Wilde as Mia. I think she's great, and I think the performances in the film are really good, but I don't think the character's written very well, and I don't think there's anything that really does anything to invest me in the character. I kind of find her reprehensible. So the film wants me to kind of go on an emotional journey with her, and I'm not on board for that journey. Like I'm not along with it. And I mean, the film starts out like, let me just say just this non-spoiler, but the film starts out with a really, really amazing one shot. G.
I agree.
Just an amazing,
really good
one
opening
shot.
sequence.
It's a really great opening sequence, and as far as I'm concerned, the film kind of writes a check that it can't cash. By the time, like, that opening promises a movie that I just don't think it delivered. And that's kind of the problem for me. It's got some decent gore scenes. There's one possession scene that's like really like super gory, like really awesome effects. Like I think like they did a good job with blood effects, and the performances and stuff like that are good. But man, this was paper thin. And let me tell you, G, we just talked about Oppenheimer. Was it last week on the show?
Yeah.
Oppenheimer's 3 hours long. This is 95 minutes. This felt longer than Oppenheimer to me.
Wow.
I was agonizing in that theater waiting for this to end. It just felt like it was going on forever.
It sounds like, Nicholas, that we're kind of eye to eye, but that you're being a little more harsh in terms of the way you kind of come down on the project. For me, I a lot of what you're saying, I'm kind of shaking my head and I'm agreeing with you, because I feel like the opening sequence was fucking stellar. Like one of the
So
best I've
good.
seen
Best part of the film, as far as I'm concerned.
in a long time. Like that first 5 minutes or so before the title card were just the cold open, if you will, was just like really, really good. It hooked you in, it hooked the audience in, but then it kind of goes up and down. We'll get into it in the spoiler side here in a second, but like there's like 2 or 3 scenes that are like that are like really, really good. But then there's, 70% of the movie that's just kind of like slapsticky and almost like cartoonish. And I thought it was getting kind of silly in a couple areas where it was like I wasn't scared so much as I was just like trying not to laugh because it was so silly. But I do think that the ambition of these first time filmmakers and the visuals, you mentioned that one shot in the opening is a great example. There's one scene where Riley is possessed in the movie that I thought was, aside from the opening, maybe the best scene in the movie. And it's really mean spirited and brutal. A lot of good practical effects in the film. Some real memorable stuff that, and I look at this and I'm an A24 fanboy. I don't think it's one of their best, but I definitely don't think it's one of their worst either. It's kind of middle of the road for me. I mean, I gave it a 7, but it could be a 6 one day.
Seven's
It could be
a middle of the road score, bud.
3.5. I don't know. I liked it. I just want to say that up top. I liked it, but I guess what I'm saying is, especially as I'm sitting here kind of talking it out for the first time, because I saw it by myself and I haven't really had a chance to talk to anybody about it. But as I'm talking, I guess what I'm saying is like I kind of see that I have more problems with it in my mind than I do things I love about it, which is never a good thing.
Drag that score down, folks. We're dragging that score down before the end of the
see.
show.
We'll see. All right, so going forward, you want to get into it, Nick? We'll just kind of talk about the film and scenes and characters and whatever we want to talk about. So going forward, for Talk to Me, anything that we say will be spoilery. So spoiler warning. All right. So we mentioned the opening sequence. We both love that. And
So
Nick,
let me
go ahead.
let me just describe. And if you, seriously, we already threw up the spoiler flag. If you haven't seen this movie, you don't want to miss this moment. But even if like for whatever reason you're still listening and you don't care, legitimately the one shot, the whole take ends with a dude stabbing himself in the face.
Mm-hmm.
It's so wonderfully impactful, and this is the problem. This is the kind of say to follow on from my point that I was saying before, G. The film starts off with a dude, like the brother shows up at the party looking for him, and he finds him, and then like he's trying to get people to shut off their phones, and then his brother stabs him, and then stabs himself in the face, G. And here's the thing, okay? I'm not the horror guy like you, but it's not that I don't like horror movies. Like I can enjoy them. Like if you promise me a movie in which the first couple minutes a person stabs themselves in the face,
Mm-hmm.
where were the kills in this movie? Where were the kills? Where were all the kills? Where was all the death? As Loisos, aka Joe Bird, aka Riley would say, like I want to see a kid get stabbed.
Right.
You know, like where's all the death and mayhem and destruction? And I mean this very, very seriously. I could not get the idea out of my head. Maybe I was just distracted the whole time watching this. Joe Bird, the kid who plays Riley, I swear to God, it's Loisos. It's just like he looks like a young Loisos. Could not get it out of my head literally.
And I thought that guy, maybe that's why, because I think it's like Lois Sauce too, but I thought that actor also did a really, really good job. You mentioned Sophie Wilde.
He was great.
A lot of
Really
great performances in the movie. There was even some performances in the film that I wish there had been more of, which is another reason why it came down a little bit for me. Let me look real quick. There were two kind of supporting characters that had the hand. The one black dude and then his friend, Zoe Tarakes, plays Haley.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's Joss is the other character. It was the black guy that had the hand in his book back initially.
Yeah, Joss was the character's name, yeah.
Yeah, those two I wish we had had more of because they were kind of refreshing. I mean, they were assholes. You know, they were kind of like typical high school assholes, but they were it was kind of a refreshing turn from this like kind of gloom and doom that we got from Sophie Wilde's character for the majority of the film because she's dealing with grief, which is another reason why I'm kind of like, all right, A24, like we get it. Literally every movie you put out has to deal with grief, especially in horror. So it was kind of a regurgitated thing there too. So just to add to what you're saying, and I just want to point out, aside from that opening that we've talked about, there's a scene where Riley becomes possessed. And I had a love-hate thing with that scene because as a horror junkie, it was my favorite scene in the movie. Like he just, it goes from like this kind of innocent, sweet kind of thing that's happening to just this horrific, violent, brutal horror in that one scene where he's literally smashing his face on a table against the mantle, above the fireplace, and you think he's going to literally kill himself because the spirit that's within him is doing that or whatever. And it's just so like it's one of those like cover your eyes kind of scenes.
It's visceral, yeah. It's really visceral.
Very impactful. And then that same character has another scene that's very similar to that in the hospital. He's mangled up already because he did all this destruction to his face. And then later in the hospital, he does basically the same thing in the bathroom. And he's smashing his head against the tile in the shower or whatever. So those two scenes, and I like the ending of the movie, even though I kind of predicted what was going to happen there. And that ended up being the case. We'll talk about the ending when we get there.
Yeah.
But everything I just mentioned to you, from a scene perspective, that's it for me. Everything else is literally just kind of mid. It's just kind of like happening.
Wow.
Now, can I ask you real quick, what the fuck?
Yeah, of course.
The thing with the dog making out with the kid, the licking, like French kissing him, and then later on when she's getting her toes or he's getting his toes sucked or whatever, like those two scenes, I'm like, why?
I heard that scene was directed by Quentin Tarantino. That was the toe scene. That was why that one was in there.
I kept waiting for a Pulp Fiction poster on the wall or something. Right? I mean, were those just silly to you? I mean, I was just like, why are these? They just kind of took me out of the horror elements of the film that I had been enjoying. I don't know. I just hated those scenes.
I mean, I'm going to take your point and I'm going to run with a lot of it because we talked about the Loisos possession scene in the middle of the movie where Joe Bird / Loisos gets, possessed and everything. And when they hit that scene, I'm there finally. That's what I'm saying in my head. I'm like, finally, this movie's finally going to start doing
Right.
something. Because is it just me, or does it take literally forever to set up the MacGuffin of the hand? It takes so long, and these scenes drag on forever of these kids like going through it, and like they get like a thrill out of it, like recording like other people for social media, like, ooh, look at how this person's acting when they're possessed, and all these kinds of different things. Which, I mean, what kids today, right, G? But I mean, for me, it takes so long. It spends forever setting up the MacGuffin of the hand that at this point, I'm literally, I'm like this. I'm like, can we please get on with it? Can we please just get to some actual plot of this movie? And then the problem is they're spinning their wheels, they're spinning their wheels, they're spinning their wheels. They're not actually starting the plot of this movie, but then they're not even giving us any character depth for the characters that we've got in it. We get like one brief scene of Mia's father's in the background, and it's implied that they have a strained relationship, and we get like one offhanded comment by Miranda Otto's character Sue. Good to see Aowen still doing stuff. You know, she mentions that she missed, you know, Mia's mom's, like, the anniversary of her death, but right, that's the only backstory that we get drawn for Mia whatsoever. And I think the film needed to do one of two things, G. I think it needed to either add a few more minutes to flesh out Mia a little bit more, or make her even likable, because she's not likable for me, because that whole possession scene with Riley, that whole thing's her fault.
I know.
And then she shows up at the hospital, and she's like all sad about it, and it's like, but she's our protagonist, and like, am I supposed to feel bad for her? Because I don't, like,
Right.
at all. She's like upset that she can't be there with the family and stuff, but I'm like, but this is all your fault,
Right.
you know? And like, I just, like, I did not like I said, I think the performance is great. I think Sophie Wilde, what she was given on the page, I don't think what she was given on the page really works. The character is so paper thin that I just couldn't get invested in her story. I just didn't. Honest to God, like, I mean this sincerely, I didn't care.
You know,
I did not care.
The movie kind of walks on eggshells when it's kind of like hit social commentary with, you know, social media and the teens on their phones, and this life and death situation that they're kind of treating as like a TikTok trend. I mean, you can remember a few years ago with the Tide Pods, and, like, you know, insert anything in the blank there that you want to. I mean, kids do stupid shit to get views or whatever. And I did like how they kind of illustrated that that was the point, regardless of what, or regardless of how serious, you know, this was.
Yeah.
They were looking at it more as, you know, not a dead person possessing their friends, but like, this is going to get 1,000 views. And I did like how that was kind of implied and kind of push that narrative. And then we also get this kind of underlying vision of like mental health and mental illness, and dealing with the grief of losing a parent. And you do get the sense that Mia's kind of going through that, but I just, like you said, the script didn't do it any favors to where all the heavy lifting was on us, because we, you know, if we don't buy into the very, very little that they're giving us, we just don't care. And maybe you didn't. I mean, based on your score, you probably didn't. But like, I thought that Sophie Wilde did such a good job that at least I connected because of her performance. But like, we have that scene in the kitchen where early on, where you can tell that she's kind of irritated with her dad. She's doing the dishes or whatever, and he keeps kind of interrupting. And you can tell that she doesn't really want to talk to him. But we don't know why. Like, we don't know why. And even later on in the movie, when it kind of comes up that, you know, she's somewhat suspicious of her dad's involvement in her mom's passing or whatever. Like, why is she suspicious? Did he have anything to do with it? I mean, I get that it's trying to kind of leave that as like a mysterious element, but also, why didn't we kind of spend a little more time on that? Why didn't we wrap that up even at the end of the movie? I don't know. It was just a lot of kind of like, and I hate to use the term plot holes, but it was just a lot of like holes kind of scattered throughout the film. And what saved it for me were the performances, which you mentioned, and really all of them. Like, I thought all the actors, from the mom to, you know, Sophie Wilde's obviously the standout, but she's a horrible character. I mean, she's like the worst. Like, I mean, the worst. You know, I like you said. I mean, basically the entire plot of the movie is her fault. I mean, at least from the point where we get to the Riley situation and he's, you know, mangled. I also hated. I'm going to let you cut in, but I also hated how we get to the end of the film and then I guess like they're okay. like Riley's okay. I mean, I feel like he's going to have facial issues with his entire life because of what he went through. So you know what I mean? Like how they kind of showed them as a happy family in the hospital at the end.
Yeah.
Was she seeing that, or is that how they are now? Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's up to our interpretation. But do
Yeah,
you?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's up to our interpretation or not. I guess we can talk more about the ending kind of when we get there. But I mean, I think my problem is with it. Like, you can have a film where you give us bare bones and you let the audience do the heavy lifting in terms of thinking and progressing along with the characters and along with the plot. That's perfectly fine. And you can even have an unlikable protagonist. I mean, think about it's a TV example, but think about like Breaking Bad, which has one of the most reprehensible protagonists in the history of television as its central character, and I think, there's just something missing for me there on the page where it just didn't draw me into it, because I picked up right away the scene with her dad. He's fuzzy in the background, like he's out of focus and he's interrupting her. Like you can just tell, like it's implied they're saying that they have a strained relationship, like right from the get-go. So I don't need a deep fleshed out backstory of Mia's character, but what I wouldn't have minded, like there are some scenes at different points in the film when she's looking through her phone at videos with her mom and stuff. I wouldn't have minded maybe parking some of that stuff a little bit earlier so I can kind of start to form a connection to Mia through that relationship with her mom that of course she's now grieving because she's now lost her mom. Like I really, really would have liked to have that earlier so I could start to like get involved or get invested with this character or go along for the ride with this story. Like even if you have a character making bad choices and being reprehensible or doing whatever they're going to do in the film, that's okay if you hook me in and bring me along for the ride. And this film just didn't do enough for me to bring me along for that ride. It really, really didn't. And like I said, I think it spends so long spinning its wheels that it really just doesn't have once it finally like got to that scene of Riley getting possessed and like that really awesome gore scene with like pulling the eyeball out of its socket and like all that stuff, super grotesque, like super awesome effects. It looked great, like and like I said, I was like finally. But then the film screeches to a halt again, and then it really just kind of just plods along.
It did a lot of that
slowly. I found, and here's two things I want to bring up to you, G. I want to pitch both of these at you and see how you felt about them too. I really disliked how the family rejects me. I mean, obviously they reject Mia because it's her fault. Whenever they go back to the hospital after Riley's thing, the family rejects her, tells her to get away, blah blah blah. Like I like that. That's perfectly good. That's perfectly fine. But then like literally like a few scenes later, it's just like, hey, come on over, bud. Like like the sister Jade is like hates her and is mad at her, but then all of a sudden is like, hey, come on back or whatever. Right. Like that seems out of line, like in terms of like an emotional character reaction, that seems like a really fast kind of character track to kind of get past that point of view. And then I want to ask you a serious question here. How inept, Australian listeners, Paul, if you're listening, chime in. How inept is the Australian police force in this movie? How do they keep the hand? How in any scenario, like talking to all these kids, like, oh, like did none of them mention the hand? Did none of them mention all the videos they were recording?
I was going to say it's all over social
all these
media.
Different possessions. It's all over social media and stuff. But the police never confiscate this hand or anything like this. Like literally, like there's almost nothing of that. And that for me was just this logical break in the movie. Yeah. I'm just like, wait, why would they still have the hand? I mean, I get it. Movie's got a movie, and we need our MacGuffin to continue movieing. But I'm like that for me was just a serious break in logic where I was just like, what?
It's a giant.
Seriously?
I agree with you. It's a giant logistical miss. It's a miss. But I will say 90% of horror movies have something like that where it's like, where the fuck is the police department? Like, where's call 911? Like, what are y'all doing? You know what I mean? So that I was not necessarily as bothered by that, but I see it like
I didn't
glaringly.
really. really dock too much off of the movie for that in terms of that, because like I said, movie's still got a movie. You still need the MacGuffin of the movie past that scene. I just maybe wouldn't have gone to like the whole police thing or some other way to set up that scene where it doesn't end with all those teenagers then getting questioned by the police, because that is, like I said, it's a huge logical break to me at that point.
The best thing when it comes to like connecting to Mia and to her emotionality that she must have felt after, it was her fault what happened to Riley, essentially, is the scene in the car when she goes to pick him up and they sing Chandelier by Sia in the car, and they have like that awesome, which by the way, this was still early on and I was still kind of riding the high from the opening sequence. So
I was so on board for the movie at that point. I was just I love this energy. I loved that energy of that scene. Like, that was great.
And you
but then,
see,
what was that weird shot of like the baby kangaroo in the street? I didn't really get what
it
was about.
It was foreshadowing for later when she was essentially being told she had to put him out of his misery. Let's go ahead and talk about. You want to go ahead and talk about the ending then, since we're kind of getting there. But
I mean, we can. But can I also mention one other thing that really really bugged me about this movie?
Mm-hmm.
So in the opening scene, again, that beautiful one shot we talked about, Duckett is the character's name, stabs his brother and then stabs himself in the face. Mm. I thought the brother was dead. When he showed up, like literally it was over an hour into the film, 2/3 of the way through this film, all of a sudden, that's not a word.
Wait, what?
The brother shows back up in the film as a character for like one scene.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, I assumed that the character was dead, but then, okay, fine, he's not dead. But like, I pretty much forgot who that character even was. And then all of a sudden you just randomly bring him back in and then he's gone again. Like literally one scene gone.
Right. He's like one of those kind of like exposition characters that knew what you were supposed to do. And like, hey, you have to go in the conservatory with the candlestick. And like, it was a whole clue thing at that point.
Man, it was just weird for me. I just really, really didn't like that the movie just randomly brought that character back for like out of nowhere. I was just like, oh wait, this is the guy from the beginning of the movie whose brother killed himself. And then to go back to this point, Gerald, you're the horror guy. You're the horror guy. You cannot tell me, that you're not disappointed with the body count in this movie.
No, and I was actually going to mention that when you brought it up earlier about when you said where are the kills. This for me, and I'm just going to tell anybody listening, and I may get some hate mail for this, even from close friends of mine, maybe, I don't know. This is more of a psychological thriller to me. It really is. Like, I think that I
can agree with that, yeah.
I think there's some scenes in it that are straight out of the horror genre, like the Riley possession scene.
Yep.
I like that opening sequence. But I mean, aside from a few scenes, this is just a psychological movie that deals with mental health and grief and the impact of social media on young folks. Mm. But it's right. I mean, you could say it's a possession film. You could say it's a, supernatural ghost story or whatever, which all kind of fits in the horror genre. So it's definitely horror adjacent. But I'm with you. There weren't any kills. I mean, were there? I mean, aside from the opening when the dude kills himself. I mean, honestly, I'm sitting here thinking about it. I think it's more. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think it's more like a Sixth Sense kind of deal where it's like, all the quote unquote horror stuff we see is from the afterlife and they're already dead. Zombies, Sixth Sense, like that kind of horror where it's like there's not on-screen kills, they're just scary. It's just scary imagery, in the afterlife, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm with you. I mean, there definitely were no kills in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but the problem with that for me is like, be a psychological thriller if you want to, but man, don't set me up with dude stabbing himself in the face.
Yeah.
Within that first 5 minutes, within that first like 2 minutes, I guess it's literally the cold open of the movie. It's a great sequence. It's so well done. It's so well shot. But now I'm waiting for the next person to stab themselves in the face like throughout the whole rest of the movie. It sets up an expectation for me as a viewer that the film just doesn't pay off.
I agree. I think I'm just a little more forgiving to it as an entire project. But I mean, this is essentially like a Ouija board story, right? I mean, the hand is essentially the Ouija board. I mean, they're conjuring these spirits, and it is frightening at times. But And obviously, I liked the film. I gave it a 7. But what brought it down for me is because that opening sequence and the first like 10 or 15 minutes after that, I was just like fully like, this is a fucking 9 or a 10. Like, this is great. And then it kind of just lost its way where it was like, it went back to that in a couple scenes, like we mentioned Riley and some stuff at the end. But then it was just had all this weird shit mixed in that I frankly didn't care about and kind of took me out of the bliss that I was in as a horror fan. You know, like I didn't like the weird love triangle story. That took me out of it. Like I didn't care about Daniel and he was with what was the friend's name? He was with
Jade.
her, Jade. He was with Jade, but I guess he had a history with Mia, but then they just talk about them holding hands. I'm like, how old are you guys? Fucking 11 when this happened? Like what? So it was just I didn't care about any of that stuff. And they spent so much time on it. And then it culminates in this weird scene where she's sucking his toes, which was like silly to me. It wasn't scary at all. It was just like a comedic. Like, and I don't think it was supposed to be, which is the worst kind of comedy. So, but you know what I mean? Like, it was just kind of it wasn't a consistent film. Like, I would love it for 20 minutes. And then the next 20 minutes, I'd be like, where's the movie that I loved? And then it would come back and then it would go away again. So I just was kind of up and down with this movie, hence the score. But at the end of the day, as a horror fan, I would recommend it, but I would also put that little asterisk that it's a psychological thriller more than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the ending a little bit. How did that sit with you? Did you see that? I kind of figured this was. Also, I want to ask you, and we're in the spoiler section, so if you're listening to this, it's your fault. But did Jade push her into the highway, or did she kill herself? What's your interpretation there?
I think she killed herself.
See, I thought that, but then as I was thinking about it afterwards, I think Jade saved her brother and pushed her because she's so kind of surprised that she's found out she's dead. Like, she doesn't. In other words, if she had thought to herself consciously, I'm going to kill myself, then I don't think she would have been surprised to learn that she was on the other side.
Okay.
What do you think?
I mean, to go one level deeper here, let's incept this. Do you trust the spirit or whatever that form or spirit or undead, whatever you want to call it, of her mom? Like, do you trust that spiritual entity of her mom that kept recurring, like from like the halfway point forward, where it was like, no, just kill Riley because then he'll be here with me and I'll protect him from all these bad demons that are trying to hurt him and stuff. And then she's trying to tell like Riley that no, I didn't kill myself, to like foster mistrust between her and her dad and all that stuff. I didn't buy the mom character at all. I honestly think that the mom character was an evil spirit. And the way I took the ending was that, and granted, the film doesn't really do a good job of spelling it out one way or the other. That's why there's this question here. I think that Mia, at least my ending for this would be Mia kills herself because she realizes that this spirit of her mother is trying to get her to commit evil and kill Riley because that's what they want. That's what the spirits want Riley. He's trapped like in this purgatory or whatever with them. That's what the spirits or whatever want. And I think Mia kills herself to sever that connection because I think she's the open door. Like there's the whole, you gotta like the candle to open the door, you blow the candle out to close the door. She's like the open door at that point. Like she's the reason why all these different things are happening around her. So I want to believe, at least for me, like I said, my ending of the movie is she realizes that this spirit of her mother is malevolent and is like, no, I'm not going to kill Riley. Like, I need to like get like past it. And plus, I mean, she had just killed her dad too, I mean, like, and she
was
like,
fucked
really
up. Yeah.
Losing her connection with reality at that point. So I want to believe, to your point, like if it was Jade, why not show that? Why not show that?
I know.
And that's weird because either scenario, the film doesn't really.
I know. I did.
Tell you either way.
I did initially, like when I left the theater, thought she killed herself because that really spoke to her mental state in the film, especially as the film goes on. Like she obviously is dealing with the trauma, and like you said, she inadvertently killed her dad. She already lost her mom.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, I never really did trust the mom either. Like And I wish they had kind of not spelled it out for me, but just kind of spent a little more time with that, or given me a few more scenes to kind of come up with that. Um, uh,
There needed to be a scene in which, and here's the scene that I think is missing from the film. It's not so much the audience figuring it out, but it's Mia figuring it out.
mhm,
If that's true, if the mother character is malevolent,
mhm.
like say that she is, and I mean I don't know that we can really say one way or another. If the mother character is malevolent, is this evil spirit, like when does Mia realize it? If that is the case, if you go
Right.
with the way that I think the film ends, when does the film spell that out, or when does that become obvious to the character? Because I don't think it does.
It doesn't. And honestly, even after she's dead and she's in the afterlife for that few minutes at the end of the movie, doesn't she see her mom there too? And she's like, "Mom," and she's kind of like calling
No,
out to
she sees her
her.
dad. She sees her
Oh,
dad.
she
She's
sees her
like
dad. That's
chasing her
right.
dad in the hallway. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. But it never really, and frankly, it never really tells us either about the dad either, because there's that kind of cool scene where he has the suicide note from the mom,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of question like, did he write that, or is did she write it? Do you know what I mean? Like we
Here's
don't really know.
Okay.
So I
I'm
did
going to
like
tell you
that.
right now. I'm going to tell you this right now about that scene. Marcus Johnson's performance in that scene is so good.
Hmm.
Like as the actor, like the dad's not acting there. That is a dad that is absolutely racked with grief
Hmm.
over the loss of his wife.
Yep.
That like the mom killed herself. I'm 100% convinced of that fact. Like I don't believe that there's any kind of nefarious goings on with the mom or like in her death or anything like that. I think that that's the malevolence of that spirit trying to convince Mia that she
Right.
had she didn't kill herself and that her dad was lying. Dude, like either Max the character is the greatest actor on the planet, or that is a dad and a father and a husband who has dealt with the loss of his wife, the tragic loss of his young wife. Like at that point,
Hmm.
dude, like that's such a good performance in that moment from that actor.
I agree.
Like, yeah,
And
I don't buy that for a second that it wasn't suicide.
and it's juxtaposed too with what we're talking about with the mom, or I guess the spirit of the mom, and how we because she does kind of have that underlying kind of sinister, right? Like you never really go, oh, this is such a sweet mom. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, you're always kind of questioning it. But the dad, I was kind of on his side whenever he was on screen, which like we already kind of said, I just wish they'd spend a little more time on his relationship with Mia and kind of where that was being strained, if you will, as opposed to all of it being implied and then kind of just ends with her essentially killing him, or we assume she kills him with the scissors
I
at the
mean,
end.
in the neck with the scissors and the
Yeah,
blood gushing out. If he's, I
yeah.
mean, granted, the brother survived the stabbing.
I'll
At the
say the
beginning of
brother is
movie,
fine, so who
the dads
knows?
could still be alive too, but who
I don't know
knows?
about the cops in Australia, but I guess the doctors are top tier.
Maybe
I
that's implied by the ending of the movie. The fact that she like can't catch up to her dad is like he's still in the world of the living and she can't get back to him because now she's
yeah, maybe he's
could
like
be that could be
yeah,
that way. It could be an
yeah.
implication there too. I'm not sure.
So
I
wrap
don't
up
know.
real quick and just tell me yes or no. Did you like the ending? Did it work for you? Her kind of realizing she's dead and she's the one on the other side of the hand. Like I liked like
I
the
liked
last
that.
30 seconds.
I liked that. Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
liked it. I think it worked with everything and putting her on the other side of that. Yeah. I did like the ending in terms of what the film up to that point had been leading to. You know, I wasn't really connected enough to me as a character like the whole time to really care about her fate either way.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, let's wrap up and then we'll get over to the fan feedback. So when it comes to Talk to Me, it's a recommend for me. I have a lot of problems with it in terms of like its structure and its tone. Um, the path was it was all over the place. It was like when you put a route in your GPS and it gives you the shortest distance to get to your point. That's the route you should take. But I feel like the brothers took a couple different routes to get there. I don't know why they did that.
Yeah.
It could have been a
That's
much more
great dude. That's such a good way to describe the plot
yeah,
of this movie. Meandering. Like
yeah,
it takes a bunch of side streets that it doesn't really need to.
right.
I don't think that the length of this movie is the problem. I think you could keep it at 95 minutes. Just
Yeah.
use that 95 minutes of screen time better.
Yeah, I agree. I would have loved to have a lot more possession scenes in the movie. I would have had, I already mentioned, I would have loved to have had a lot more of those supporting characters, which I thought were really cool. Like they were really kind of those typical high school antagonists, but you still kind of pull for them. Mia was abhorrent as a lead character. It was really hard to pull for her. To me, Riley was the one I was really pulling for, and um, and the mom. I love Riley's mom too. She was freaking hilarious in this. I thought she was a great comic relief and kind of the typical single mom. She did a really good job too. And you already mentioned all the performances all around really good. A great first directorial effort, I thought too, and that really impressed me. I feel like if this had been a veteran director or something like that, I probably wouldn't have been as forgiving, but I thought it was a really good first outing, and I'm really excited to see what these guys do. I went back and watched a lot of their YouTube shorts after seeing the movie, and they are very inventive. They're fucking wild. They have I don't know if you've seen any of them. They have this YouTube like horror comedy where Ronald McDonald goes into the local, I guess it's supposed to be like a Chick-fil-A kind of chicken place that's across the street. And he's pissed that Ronald's pissed that they're taking all McDonald's business. So he goes in there and slaughters the whole crew that's working there.
That's amazing.
It's really
I got to
good.
find that. That's amazing. That sounds great.
But yeah, anyway, so I'm excited to see what these guys do. And it's a recommend for me, although it's a mild recommend. Nick, you want to wrap up on Talk to Me?
I'm gonna agree with you. I'm excited to see what they do next. I wish this had connected with me more than it did, but unfortunately it just didn't. I find it interesting too that you and I both kind of had the same exact criticisms of the film, but your score is so much higher than mine. I think maybe you still found that inroad. I think you still found a way for the film to let you in, whereas it just didn't really do that for me. I think there's those great scenes of like them singing Chandelier, the opening sequence, the scene you're talking about, like with Miranda Otto's character of Sue, of like knowing that the kids are going to have a party and then like going to all the different kids and like, grilling them about having the party and stuff like, all that stuff is really, really great. There was some really, really good stuff in here, but I mean, why did the scenes of the possessions with the hand have to take so long? Yeah. And why did we have to have all these ancillary characters that A, we don't know anything about, and B, aren't even there to be like horror movie cannon fodder, and maybe that's me looking for them to play more on tropes in a horror movie when I hate them anyway.
Right.
So, you'd think that this would have been like a nice, refreshing kind of thing for me. But for, like I said, for whatever, like I just did not gravitate enough toward the character of Mia to really connect into it. And like I said, I think Sophie Wilde's performance, I think, is great.
Yeah.
It's just, I really, really wish that this film had taken me along for the ride. But hey, keep your eyes peeled for young Loy Sauce. That kid's going places, man.
Well, I can't believe Loy Sauce got in this flick.
Whole time I was like,
yeah, I thought that too.
Looks exactly like Loy Sauce. I could not get it out of my head.
I thought that too. I should have actually texted him, but I don't know if he's seen it yet. And he would probably been like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, I thought that too at one point when I was watching the movie. Good old Loy Sauce showing up in an Australian horror. Who would have known? All right, well there you go. That's the P's wrap up on Talk to Me. 7 out of 10 for me, and a 4 out of 10 from Nick, which gives us a 5.5 from the P's.
Oof, drag that average down, baby.
Man, thanks a lot, dude. All right. we don't have a jingle to put in here yet, but we're going to be spinning the roulette wheel for the first time this week. But before we do that, Nick, I tell you what, let's head over to the comments section. Now, you and I ask ourselves one big question at the top of every episode, but we also go over at the end of the episode and we let the fans ask us a question. Do you have one picked out over there, buddy?
I got one.
Let's hear it, man.
All right. So, Destruction in Human Form himself, Mr. Jared Taylor, love you, brother. Longtime supporter of literally everything I've ever done, which I don't understand how anyone could be or is, but I love you, dude. He posted a question in there. He said top 5 horror movies according to me, which I had to. I had to answer because I felt like it was the best question that really
I got to write this
really
down.
Grabbed at me. And so number 1 is probably Saw. I love the original Saw movie. I think and talk about psychological horror. Yeah. I really love that movie. I mean, granted, it's gore fest completely, like all over the place with the contraptions and traps and everything. But I really, really love Saw. Absolute masterpiece to me. Number 2, really, really old silent film. Nosferatu, baby.
Yeah,
love Nosferatu, man. Max Schreck as Count Orlok. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I watch that every single Halloween. Can't wait to watch it again this year.
Did you see Shadow of the Vampire with Willem Dafoe?
I still have never seen that. No, I really do need to see that with Dafoe as him. Yeah. Number 3, I know you love this movie, so I don't even have to ask. John Carpenter, The Thing, baby.
Yes.
Just how good is The Thing, man?
So good, man. I can't
Utter and
believe it's your
complete
3,
masterpiece.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 4 for me is, and this was tough for me but I threw this in here because I know I really do love it, and it's a classic now anyway, even though it doesn't seem like it should be because it was only released in the 90s. Scream, the original Scream.
Yeah, dude. I'm
How
so
good is
proud
that
of
movie?
you. That's in my
How
top
good is
5
that
too.
movie?
Yeah.
And then let me big shout out to Paul from the countdown here. Number 5, Train to Busan.
Oh, good one.
Zombies are probably my favorite horror creature because I love like zombie video games and stuff. And like I've always loved zombie media for the most part, except for The Walking Dead. Oh God,
That is
but yeah, Train to Busan is so good. And then like the emotional, just absolute sucker punch it deals you at the end of that movie is like a 1-2 punch. It's like it's not only like a really great gory horror zombie movie, but also like really emotional, like really great for the whole ride as well. You ever seen that one? You've seen that one, right?
Oh yeah, loved it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
you
was
better have.
really good, man. Yeah, really good. I love that one. So you got 2 of mine in your top 5 too. So the Scream and the Thing. So I'm proud. That's a really good. List there.
It.
So
And
thank you, Jared, for bringing about the top 5 format too. There for a second too.
Oh, see,
callback. A little callback.
So I saw that twinkle in your eye.
So I'm going to stick. This question came in today, and I read it, and I'm like, I'm going to do that one. Kayla, my girl Kayla, patron of the show, she says, what's the most fucked up horror movie you have seen to date? By the way, I'll just throw this caveat in there real quick, Nick. Hopefully Dan keeps this in for Kayla's sake. But she texted me earlier, and she said, I threw my question up in the chat. And then she said that she thinks I should publicly apologize to you for making you watch Talk to Me. So I'm doing that kind of, I guess.
I agree, Kayla.
The most fucked up horror movie I have seen to date is The Human Centipede. Have you ever seen that, Nick?
No, never have. It's one of those movies where I just know it's like disgusting, like gross out, nasty nonsense.
Now,
and like I never ever would.
There's some like really unique, inventive, original things, and I'm talking about in the first film. The sequels, they're just really crazy over the top.
They just get more ridiculous as they go.
Yeah. But the first one actually has some redeeming qualities to it from a horror perspective. But it is so fucked up, man. I mean, this mad scientist basically sews together humans to make a literal centipede. And there's some really, really fucked up scenes in that movie that just make me sick to even think about. So The Human Centipede would be my answer. Can you think of one off the top of your head, Nick? The most fucked up horror movie you've seen?
I'm going to think of an answer, but it's not going to be a bad answer. It's going to be a really, really good answer. And I'm going to circle right back to my top 5 list with The Thing. Number one, how amazing, how brilliant, how ingenious, incredible are the creature effects in that movie. But they're also, dude, like the chest caving in, the head with the spider legs. Like, dude, that movie is just, I get the, it's tough to rewatch for me because like the creature effects are so good and so gross out, disgusting, nasty, just it's the perfect horror, perfect horror creature. Really is. It's just an absolute like monument to perfection as far as horror goes for me. So I'm just gonna vote for that one because exactly. So good, I have to pick that one again. I have to throw that one back in here because not necessarily in the same vein as your example in that it was just bad, but in this sense. For sure. The Thing is just you won't find films that are more messed up than The Thing. I don't think as messed up probably, but
next week on the Peas for the very first time in almost 8 years, Gerald will not be on an episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. I will not be one of the Peas. So wow. Nick, what is it? The Last Voyage of Demeter? Is that how you say it?
The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which reason why I think it's probably Demeter, but the reason why I kind of wanted to watch this movie is, what was one of the movies I just named in my top 5 there?
Nosferatu.
It's Nosferatu. And like that portion of, I mean, obviously Nosferatu's Dracula, guys. Like we all know the whole thing with, the estate and everything. We won't talk about that. But like one of the whole key cruxes to that whole Dracula story is when Dracula gets put on a boat and shipped to a different place. Like I think that this movie is just meant to kind of be like a dramatic, like maybe not dramatic's the wrong word, but like I think they're only focusing on like the horror aspect of just like the on the boat part of like Dracula loose on a boat.
Right.
Because like they say the name in the trailer, they say Dracula in the trailer, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, because I think Dracula's public domain now, isn't it? Like you can kind of do whatever you want with it. Like you can make movies like set like kind of like they did with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Oh boy.
Yeah. Good time.
But yeah, like I think that's kind of like what this is I think it's just taking just that portion of the Dracula story out and setting it as a feature film on its own, like Dracula on a boat. How's that going to play out? So I've always loved, like I said, Nosferatu and things like that. So that's why I'm interested in it. And my arch nemesis, besides Gerald, of course, Brad from the Cinema Guys is going to be here with me as the guest P to hang out and spend some time. It's going to be really, really fun. So I'm excited to talk to him about that.
Yeah. So shout out to my boy Brad, and he'll be kind of filling in for me next week. And you guys are going to cover that film. Get out to the theater and see that. That'll be releasing this week, and it'll be on next week's episode. And then
we'll try not to break everything around here.
Yeah, don't break it. Yeah, don't piss off the 36 listeners that listen to this on a regular basis. Now, when
we get 30 more, where did they come from? You didn't tell me about a 30 jump all of a sudden.
You came on board and we gained 30, so thank you. Now, when I come back from my vacation, you and I are going to cover a film. Now, what we're going to do for the first time this week is we're going to spin the roulette wheel. Now, the way the roulette wheel works, which we will incorporate probably at least on a monthly basis once we kind of get going, is there's a pick from Nick, there's a pick from me, and then there's a pick from the patrons. Yep. So you can submit a pick if you're a patron of the show, and the links are in the show notes if you want to join up over on Patreon for as little as $1. And you can throw a movie at us that you want us to review here on the show, which will be one of our weekly episodes. So it'll just be, whenever there's nothing cool in the theater or we don't get a chance to go out to the theater or whatever. So when I come back from vacation, that'll be the first week that we're doing that. All right. So those watching see the little wheel on the screen. It's so professional, but we have a pick for Gerald, a pick for Nick, and a pick for the patrons. If it lands on the patrons, we'll have to do another wheel. But the magic of editing, I won't bore you. So you ready, Nick? Let's give this thing a spin here.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
First roulette wheel spin here on the P's.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
Hey, look at this. Nick.
Ooh.
Nicholas gets the first roulette wheel pick.
Ooh, baby.
Nice. What do you think, man? What's your pick? What are we reviewing when I come back from vacay?
Ooh, man. So.
Did you have one? Because you were kind of fumbling around.
I did, and then I kind of was thinking about like this would be perfect because I know you've never seen it, and everyone must see, must experience, must live within them the beauty and mastery that is Tommy Wiseau's The Room. Just celebrated 20 years. Just celebrated 20 years this year. I just saw this in theaters back at the end of June, the Fathom event. Super, super amazing to see this in an audience with a crowd. I'll talk about that more when we talk about it. I think I talked about it already probably, but one of the best theatrical experiences I've ever had in my life. Like, it was so much fun to watch that with a crowd of people. It's less fun when you don't watch it with a crowd of people, but Gerald, just let it happen to you. Just let it happen to you. That's all I can tell you about it. Just let it happen to you.
All right. So The Room, coming up on a future episode of 2Ps, we'll be reviewing Tommy Wiseau's The Room. And I'm glad you picked that one because it was number one on my Blind Spots top 5 I did last year with our boy Dan. And it's one of those movies where I've seen like probably 20 scenes or like clips, I should say.
You've
like
seen most of it like in social media
clips.
GIFs and in clips and stuff like that on social media, which
and I've seen The Disaster Artist, which I really like too. I really like The Disaster Artist. So,
and the great thing about The Disaster Artist too is the recreations of the scenes in it are legitimately note perfect. Like all the scenes they recreated, because they have that whole montage at the end too, where they play side by side like their version, but then the original version, like they note perfect. They did perfect when they recreated all of those. I'm super excited for you to actually experience the genius of Tommy Wiseau from beginning to end. I can't wait to watch it again because I cannot wait. You are my rose, Gerald. You are my rose. I can't wait to throw a football to you. And
I don't know what that means, but I'm excited to find out.
You're gonna find out.
All right, sweet. So next week we'll welcome in Brad from the Cinema Guys and some show called Apple TV Plus. I think he does that show as well. And you guys will be talking about the last voyage of Demeter. Am I saying that right?
We're gonna say Demeter until I'm proven wrong.
And then the week after, we will review The Room. Nick, thanks for holding it down next week, brother, and thanks for talking about Talk to Me with me tonight. I'm sorry it didn't hit with you as much as I had hoped it would, but thanks for doing it, brother.
I hold you personally responsible. Anytime I do not get the enjoyment out of a film that I would like to, I'm going to hold you personally responsible.
Especially
that is going to be the MO of this show. I just lost the bottom of my pen.
Oh, my God. All right, man. I love you. Thanks for holding it down next week, and I'll see you on the flip side, brother.